welcome back to the last week, week 14 of our Pokemon Battle League. This is the final match of our entire season here before playoffs begin. This is Coach Ian of the Lake of Rage Ungodly Qwilfishes, and this week I'm facing of the Secret Garden Hoopas. This is once again another divisional game, so I have played him in the past. But what's interesting is that, just like my last two matches, a good portion of my team is actually new since the last time I faced him. So it's pretty interesting from his side, and let's just get in here and see how it goes. So I am going to lead off with my Tentacruel here. I brought him mostly in order to counter a Suicune and to set up Toxic Spikes, and seeing how he has 4 Levitate or Flying type Pokemon and no Suicune, this Tentacruel is pretty much useless from the get-go. So I am just going to go for Toxic Spikes immediately off the bat as he goes for a Stealth Rocks with his Uxie. I figured maybe I can poison the Tapu Lele or the Lopunny. If not, whatever, don't really need him. So second turn here, I do go for the Scald, and he goes for the Yawn, which is pretty effective. I don't think it's the first, I think it is the first time he's used Yawn on the Uxie, but I actually really support the Yawn set. It's really interesting, even though it can seem like a waste of time, because they can just switch out, but it does force a switch, which can be really beneficial. But I don't think he expects me to just be sacking off the Tentacruel and basically turn 1, so I am just going to go for the second layer of spikes as he U-turns out into the Batata here. Probably just to defog them away, knowing that I'm going to be asleep if I decide to stay in, which I do. So once again, I just decide to stay in as he goes for a defog. I'm just trying to whittle down the sleep turns, and if I can wake up and get a Scald off, that's going to be great. So I am asleep for the first turn here, and he does get the defog off and then retreats out into his Tapu Lele. Big threat of the entire season. Obviously, it's one of the best Draft League Pokemon in the format. But this turn I am going to wake up on second turn, and I'm going to go for a Scald, which actually does quite a bit of damage. Tells me that she probably doesn't have any special defense or HP investment, besides maybe leftover 4, or probably, I don't know, maybe 20 extra points trying to get a speed creep on some of my 85s. But she does go for a Psyshock, which hits my Mawile pretty hard. Not really expecting that. I'm going to switch out as he brings in the Rotom Heat, and I send out my Rotten Egg, the Chansey. I really wanted Mawile to be a Tapu Lele counter, but unfortunately Psyshock makes things very difficult to counter, as Tapu Lele is essentially a mixed attacker at this point with no loss of stats. But I am going to switch in the Chansey here, and I'm going to be Tricked a Choice Scarf, which is actually fine. My Chansey has 4 status moves this week, which means I don't really need to be in here more than 1 turn at a time. So I'm just going to switch out into Zeraora, who's going to take a Volt Switch. I go for a knockoff on the next turn, assuming that he'll either switch out or stay in to go for the Overheat, and he does go for the Overheat. Luckily, I'm not mixed attacking this week, which means I do not have a special defense reduction as I usually would with a mixed set. So I'm going to be able to take that, and I'm going to go for a Close Combat, which unfortunately leaves the Rotom with maybe 2 or 3 HP left. Luckily, however, he does overpredict and goes for the Volt Switch, which I am going to absorb, which is going to give me 25% of my HP back, so that's really nice. I know was probably prepping for playoffs because this match had no standing on whether or not he was going to be in, so he's probably testing some sets and seeing what he can do. But I still think he's over-predicting a little bit, and maybe just not anticipating me going for like an all-in approach here, as he does bring out the Batata and seems to anticipate me switching out in fear of an Earthquake. But just like with my Tentacruel here, I am just gonna switch, or I am just gonna stay in, see what happens. I do get the knockoff off, And now I'm going to switch into Detlef Shrimp, my Gyarados on the Lopunny. Basically just wanted the Intimidate drop, assuming that he was probably going to go for a Fake Out. This isn't a matchup I want to stay in for very long. I can just not go Mega and try to bait out a high jump kick, which would be resisted in my base form. But probably anticipating that he is going to switch out. It was also risky for me because if he had the Thunder Punch, that would have been pretty painful, and even at -1, return would actually do some damage too. But I actually am going to switch out into my combo on his switch, so I actually am in a favorable position here as it's combo against Ferrothorn, which allows me to set up my Stealth Rocks in its face. He goes for the Thunder Wave, but unfortunately he does get the miss on that. Wouldn't have affected me very much. I don't even have any speed investment. I'm fully defensive this week, but anticipating another Thunder Wave or maybe a Gyro Ball or something, I'm just going to switch out into Chansey. I pretty much did what I was going to do, and I actually didn't think he was going to stay in here, but he does go for the Leech Seed, and that sucks because he's going to get a lot of HP for the Chansey, because I do have full HP investment. So switching out into Batata, I am going to go for, I believe, a Wish here, yes. And I did make kind of a risky prediction here that didn't pay off. So he does get the Leech Seed recovery, which gives him a lot of HP, almost back to 100%. But I do switch out, thinking that maybe he'll try to go for a U-turn again to catch me on a switch, knowing that he can't really even do anything to me with Earthquake. And I thought maybe if he did go for Earthquake with my Berry here, I would be able to survive and get the Wish recovery, but unfortunately I do not. So he does go for the Earthquake and KOs Zeraora, which is fine. Zeraora did his job. I think he knocked off 3 Pokemon or so, and all of his coverage is pretty much for things that didn't show up, or for things that I have other means of coverage for. So I'm going to bring out the Tentacruel, and I do go for the Scald, expecting a switch or a U-turn, and I do end up getting the burn, as it does a lot of damage, and he U-turns doing, I think it was like 3 damage, and switches out into his Tapu Lele here. And like I said before, the Tentacruel was pretty much death fodder at this point for me. He had really no function besides hitting things with Scald or Sludge Wave. So in anticipation of a Choice Scarf, I actually do go for the Sludge Wave, which surprisingly does outspeed the Tapu Lele, as I do have a base 100 speed, which always catches people off guard. But without the Choice Scarf, I do outspeed, and I'm able to take out the Tapu Lele, which is pretty nice. So then the Lopunny does come out here and goes for a Heal Bell, which is pretty cool. And I just go for another Scald because I don't need this thing anymore, and I'm kind of just waiting for it to be sacked off. I don't get the burn unfortunately, but I've had a lot of luck in the past already this game, so it's fine, as he goes for a return and does take out the Tentacruel, giving me a free switch into Kommo-o here. Kommo-o is a pretty big counter to both Ferrothorn and and Lopunny, as I can go fully defensive and still one-hit KO with Drain Punch on the Lopunny and do a sizable chunk to the Ferrothorn. But he does bring in the Uxie, which is a pretty good counter to Kommo-o in return. Luckily, the Psychic terrain is going to go away, so I am able to stay in here if I wanted and take a Psychic, but feeling like I had a better chance with Ficki Minaj my Mawile, I do switch out into her, thinking that maybe I could get some kind of setup or just go for an attack or something like that. Or just eat a Yawn like I do, eat a U-turn or something, eat a Psychic. I have a lot of options here. But I do get Yawned, and he is going to U-turn, as I'm just going to stay in and see what happens. I'd rather Mawile be asleep than any other Pokemon on my team, so it's fine by me. As he actually brings out the Ferrothorn on my Super Fang, which brings it down to about half. Wasn't expecting Ferrothorn to come out, but that's actually really good for me, because none of my other attacks would have done very much to this thing from 100%. So that is going to put me to sleep on the Yawn turn. and I'm just going to sit here waiting to see how it's going to play out, as he does go for the Leech Seed, which, just like the Thunderwave earlier, does miss, very unfortunately. I'm not sure if it would have changed what happens next, because I haven't run any calcs for it, but I do wake up on turn 2 again, and go for a Fire Blast, which hits, and with Sheer Force, Fire Blast from Mawile is actually very strong. I don't have any investment in special attack whatsoever, but it does take out the Ferrothorn from about 50% HP, which is crazy. But then he brings out the Vitetta, the Gligar, which unfortunately does not go down to Stealth Rocks, so I'm going to have to switch out into Gyarados here, hoping he's going to go for Earthquake. But he actually goes for Roost, which I kind of didn't anticipate at all, but makes sense. Good play on his part. I am going to pretty much be able to set up in this thing's face still, so I'm going to go for a Dragon Dance, which is a partial mistake. I should have anticipated that he might have either Toxic or, as you'll see, the ability to switch into Uxie for another status. I should have gone for a Substitute, but I wasn't really considering that the status would come out and would hamper me that much. So he does U-turn out into the Uxie here, and I am going to Mega Evolve on this turn and go for a second Dragon Dance, which is a mistake. I already saw the Yawn twice. I don't know why I didn't think of the Yawn coming out. Probably should have just gone for the Crunch here. Probably would have taken it out even at +1. But I got greedy and went for a second Dragon Dance. Even a Substitute right there would have been very good. It would have blocked the Yawn. But yeah, I wasn't really thinking there. I kind of thought he might Psychic for some reason. It wouldn't really do any damage. I don't know what I anticipated. It was just brain fart. Week 14, not in the playoffs. But here I do go for the Substitute, thinking that I might be naturally bulky enough that he couldn't hurt me enough to take out my sub before I did wake up. But surprisingly to me, he does break the sub just with a U-turn. I'm wondering if he had investment in the attack, or if it just the super effective damage does enough. But this lets him switch into his Lopunny here, as I am still asleep on the turn 1. And I'm not going to risk it. I do outspeed, but I don't think I'm going to get another turn 2 wake up. So I just switch out into Mawile, hoping to catch a Fake Out. But unfortunately he does go for the high jump kick immediately off the bat, which takes out the Mawile. She did her job and couldn't be any more happy, so, you know, it's fine. So I'm going to switch out into the Como here. He was still my Mega Lopunny counter, as he's going to switch back into his Como counter, the Gligar, but anticipating that, I am going to go for a Dragon Tail, which actually knocks it down to the red and drags out the Lopunny once again. So I'm just going to sit here, and I think I go for another Dragon Tail, as he jump kicks. It's not going to do very much comparatively, and he's going to get hurt by the Rocky Helmet. And oh no, I do go for the Dragon Punch, just hoping to take this thing out immediately and get some HP back, which is exactly what happens, and it brings me up to maybe 60% HP. So that's really good for me. The Gligar is going to be within any move range upon coming back in, and the Noggin here can just be Dragon Tailed out. I don't really anticipate it doing very much. So luckily it does go for the Zen Headbutt instead of like a Psychic, but so that does Rocky Helmet damage, and then my Dragon Tail is going to phase it out once again. Stealth Rocks is still not going to take this thing out, but it's close enough that even a Drain Punch will after that. So the Batata comes back in, and it survives on a minuscule amount of health again, but I do outspeed because I'm just naturally faster, and I'm going to go for a Drain Punch, take its 10 HP here, however much I get back, and it's going to go down, and I think the game is pretty much in the bag at this point. The Noggin's going to come back in and just barely survive, just like everything, and I'm just going to outspeed. Oh, sorry, I don't outspeed, actually. But the Zen Headbutt is not going to KO, and the Rocky Helmet is. So yeah, that was a very good game, and I think I was testing some things out, so I hope he had some good play testing there, see what he can do for finals, or playoffs, I guess. So this is my last battle of this season, as I did not make playoffs because I had a pretty poor main season. I had a lot of RNG hacks, a lot of just generally bad team building, and my draft really wasn't the best. I think I've been skating by on a lucky draft so far, as I don't think I'm the best drafter. I think my strong suit is in improvising with the teams that I have and trying to check individual components of the opponent's teams. So I think I make up for my lack of drafting skill with a good improvisational team building skill. So hopefully next season, if we're doing the GBA rule set, I believe, I'll have a better draft. Maybe I'll consult with another coach on some drafting strategies and some team cores or something like that, and see what kind of team I can build to hopefully have a playoff season again, and hopefully a finals match again. So yeah, this is going to be it for a while. Stay tuned. I think it's into Zashay, Evan, Jacob, um, Chris, and Corey. I think are six. I think it's six. They're pretty good battlers, and they're going to have a good show for you, hopefully, in the next few weeks. And yeah, I'll see you next time and next season.